First, let's do this. Yeah, okay. So we learned first of all, Lili Nishmat Avigdor Chayavim ben Rachaleo Mer Tzvi. In addition to that, for Fuash Nema for Abigail Peshabat Sarah and cousin Chani. Okay. And also the Rav of the Sholai Daven at Mishkan Shoshanaz had open heart surgery yesterday. So we have also for Rav Yitzchak ben Rina. Also should have Fuash Nema. Okay. We are Perek Daled, chapter 4, Mishnah 14, 15, 16, or 17. It starts with Rabbi Nehorai. We did the first part of the Mishnah. We're going to go a little bit more into it in a moment. And we talked about the issue of, let me actually just reread the Mishnah first, and then I'll talk about what the issue is. Chapter, Mishnah 18 years. Okay. If you have of Gahati, it's 14, and others it's 17. So again, I did look back a while back at different hand, what do you call them, Kita Yad, and I found some discrepancies there and stuff. So I can't tell you the history behind it. Okay, so Rav Nahurai Amner, we discussed that was either his name or was thought he was someone who enlightened people. The word Nahora, which Nahora means to be light. Having golad makom Torah, you should be exiled to a place of Torah, and we did. That's what the topic was last week for the most part. Don't say the Torah will come to you. That your friend will keep it through you. Whatever that means, we'll see. And don't rely on your own wisdom. We're in chapter 4, Mishnah, which in the article is 18, it looks like. Okay. So first of all, it's got one thing that I don't know if I made clear last week or not, is this Mishnah is based on a premise that a person is not currently living in a place that's Torah based. Because if a person is living in a place that's already Torah based, they have a shurim, and they have minyan, and they have a gemachim, and they have the whole infrastructure of a religious community. There's no reason there. Should say there is no giant reason across the board to say get out of Dodge and go to somewhere else. I actually used that expression recently for someone who was in their 40s, and I said, "What does that mean? Get out of Dodge?" Anyways, yeah. Oh well. So the first thing we have to make the assumption is we are all very fortunate. When I say we, I mean those of us here around the table, at least, that we live in a city. That we live in a wonderful place that has lots of strange people. It has lots of Baruch Hashem Torah and a lot of thirst for Torah. Plenty of shurim. When people ask me, I talk to people quite often about Aliyah, or want to know. I don't go out there; they somehow find me and talk about Aliyah. And one of the questions they ask is how many shuls are in the neighborhood. So I said within the 7-8 minute walk of my house there are 8. So and Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, multiple Sfaradi types, and some that are mixed. Ashkenaz and the Sfarad, dealer's choice. All that kind of fun stuff. And there are shiurim. There's something for somebody almost every day of the week. There's Daf Yomi up the wazoo, and there's just plenty available. Baruch Hashem. However, we also know that a person can only learn makom shelibo chafetz, where you want to be. So let's say, for example, and this has happened. It happened. You live in a community. It's plenty of Torah, great infrastructure. You have everything you need to be a religious Jew, whatever that means. But you're not happy in the community. You don't like your neighbors. You don't like your house. You don't like the weather, whatever it might be. So already you feel a sense that you're not happy there. That influences how you feel about what you do in the community. Very similar to someone who, and I've never, thank God, ever been in a situation who gets up and hates their job and can't stand going to work. And I know there are plenty of people who do. I know that. Smiling. First of all, you could just roll out of bed. You don't have to get out of bed and you're at work already. But I've never, thank God, ever been in that kind of position. Thank God. I've been days where I didn't want to go in, whatever it might be, but in Begadol, never. But there are plenty of people who hate their job. The biggest time of day of the week for a man to have a heart attack in the United States is Monday morning al haboker, right, before they go back to work, the beginning of the work week in the United States. That is correct. So I can tell, I won't obviously say names or anything, but there's this guy I know, he's 42 years old, who worked for about 12, 13 years at a department store in the United States, hated his job, didn't have even any benefits because they wouldn't give him full time. And he would always complain that, I said, there's other businesses that you can go to. You have skills. If you want to work in a department store, there's like 1,000 you can go to. I know, but I'm too lazy. Okay, well, you basically he's made his own choice. That's correct. So here, Rabbi Norai is telling us, Torah means if you're in a place that's not suitable for you, whether it is Torah-based or not, especially if it's not, go somewhere else. And we talked about last week, what does it mean, galut? And the whole. So when we talk about, what do you mean a place of Torah, though? What does that mean? Because if Torah is wisdom, if we make the assumption that Torah is wisdom, it's chokhmah, why should location matter? You can open up a sefer and learn. You can emphasize, it is emphasized that the place really is important. The Mishne doesn't say buy books. It doesn't say that. Like if you don't have a place to learn Torah, go out and buy some Sfar. Go online, go to HebrewBooks.org and find thousands and thousands of books. It doesn't say that. It says go to a place of Torah, because Torah is not just information. Torah is knowledge. Torah is wisdom. Torah is culture. It's atmosphere. It's community. Exactly. It's a way of life. There is no religion on earth besides Judaism. No religion that basically, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, doesn't dictate, but there's the structure of your entire day is Torah based. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Everything. We have a structure. Doesn't mean there are certain things you have to do by a certain time, obviously certain tefillot and all, but begadol, our day is measured by. So I had one time I put into my phone, it was wintertime. I was discussing my day with somebody at school a few years ago, and I had mincha in my phone. She says, that's hysterical. You actually put mincha into your phone? I said, I know my day today, and I have to remind myself, I don't forget mincha. I don't. But I have to make sure I put it in there. Otherwise, it's going to go, and I'm diving by myself somewhere. I don't want to do that. So what makes it is what's important to you. And that is that the daily structure is Torah-based. A person doesn't just learn from text. A person learns from their environment. When you're around people who are machshiv. Let's say, for example, I'm not into art that much. I know you are. I'm not but when I have gone more than once to the Chicago Art Museum, you can't but be enthralled. And first of all, the names of the painters, these artists who are just, you stand in front of Sunny in the Park with George, Pointillist and Syrah, and you just stand there mesmerized. This Pointillist and this little, it's chokhmah. It really is, and it says chokhmah b'goyim tamin. We have every right to say yes. There's chokhmah by goyim, not Torah chokhmah, but chokhmah. Absolutely. So someone may say, "What do you think of that painting on the wall?" So, it's nice. And then they may be into art and talk to me for 25 minutes and explain all of this and that. I really couldn't care less. But go to the museum and you're in a place of art and you're surrounded by people who love art. It's a totally different story. Same thing you can learn, I've said, you can learn in your house. It's different when you learn chavruta. It's different when you're learning Beit Midrash. It's different when you're learning in a huge Beit Midrash versus, 6 guys sitting around the table. There's a definite influence. By the way, as a speaker also, I can tell you, as a teacher and as a speaker, there's a different way that I teach the same things. But if I have a larger group versus a smaller group, or I'm doing something on Zoom and everyone's in black because no camera is open, it's a very different perspective that I have or feeling I have when I'm teaching versus when I have people in front of me. And the Rambam also says this pretty strongly, that people are human beings in general. Put aside Torah for a second. We're shaped by our surroundings. This whole question of nurture versus nature when it comes to certain things. But many things are very much nurture. It's the environment that you are in. A person's friends, their neighbors, their teachers, the leaders, their parents, siblings, and children, by the way, influence on who a person becomes. Reb Norai understood this reality very clearly. If you want to grow in Torah, you have to go where Torah is valued, where it's discussed, where it's lived, where it's debated, meaning it's a part of life. And I very much enjoy when I talk to these people who ask about Aliyah. They said, tell me about the Torah in the community. Almost every single person I've talked to over the years, and I've talked to, thank God, a lot, almost every one of them doesn't necessarily make it the first question, but it is among the questions. Lahavdil, I think it's Lahavdil even. I gave a talk, let's see, we were 17, it's at least 5 years, 22, 23 years ago. It was Parshat Chayei Sarah, and I got up and I said I was very, very disappointed in all the Mefarshim in the Torah. Every single one missed something gigantic. The whole thing with Eliezer, even though his name's not mentioned, but Eliezer goes to find on behalf of Yitzchak to find a wife. And it says what he does. He hides by the well and he looks to see, is she going to give the water, all these things. And they didn't ask, doesn't say anything in there. The Mefarshim don't point out that Eliezer didn't ask the important questions to Rivka's family. Like, does she use a white tablecloth on Shabbat? Does she stack dishes? Does she use a seatbelt in the car? If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's a very good thing, by the way. These insane, stupid, gross, disgusting questions that sometimes people, shadchanim, will ask. What's on their head as opposed to what's in their head. Lots of really ridiculous, stupid questions because they don't ever ask about midot. I should ever. I'm saying I got many calls like that over the years. I'm interested in making a shidduch of one of your congregants' sons. Can you tell me a little bit about them? So I start to say, well, tell me, and they start the dumb question. I said, okay, we're done. Why are we done? Said, you didn't ask me anything about the midot, the family. Yeah, of course we're going to get to that. But the first thing they're asking about these ridiculous ones, you know what the question means about stacking dishes? You know what that even means?
No.
If you stack your
more than one dish?
No. If on Shabbat it's your meal, you stack the dishes, means you don't have help in the home. Because if you have help, they would be removing one dish at a time. But if you're doing it, you're stacking them. What about the seatbelt? What's that? Why shouldn't the woman wear a seatbelt? No, why would they ask that? Because it accentuates the form of the woman. At least when she went through the windshield, she was tzniistic. Okay? And I'm not making this stuff up. Okay. So
I've been reading Tversky.
Yes.
Tversky? Yes. He was one of the Gedolim.
Yes.
And he had like a Dear Abby column in the Haredi newspapers, and he compiled them, many of them were several times into a book. And he has people writing him. This woman wrote him and said she found her Pirke chassan, but her brother or father, I can't remember, didn't think the marriage was going to work
because
the chassan's father didn't have a beard.
Oh, the chassan's father didn't have a beard, so therefore the marriage wouldn't work. Right? Okay.
And she said, I think I'm still allowed to marry the guy because, that should
be
Trump.
Should.
I'm sorry to use the word Trump.
Yes, that's okay. But there's a story, I think it was the Satmar Rav. I think. I may have told the story here. But if it wasn't him, it was a Hasidic Rebbe. There was a Sudash Lishit, there was whatever it was, and some guy came in to talk to the Rebbe. And he goes to the Gabbai, he says, I want to talk to the Rebbe. Why? You want to talk to him? Huh? Do you remember who it was? Yes, he tells the story.
It's him.
It's him himself with the clean shaven. Okay, so the Gabbai goes to the Rebbe. He said, listen, there's this Jew here, wants to talk to you. Clean shaven. What kind of Jew is he? So he said, listen to the Rebbe said to this guy, to the Gabbai, after 120 years, he's going to go up to Shamayim. And Hashem's going to say to him, Jew, where's your beard? But they're going to say to you, beard, where's your Jew? That was like so stark. Like we judge people and it's a horrible thing. We all do it to a degree. There's no question. A person can say, yeah, with everything. A person can say, oh, I don't ever judge. We do. It's natural, unfortunately. We have to, I thank God I've been able to get over a part of that, but it's things happen, you make this instant judgments. It's not good. But the opposite is good, where we want to be influenced positively by people who are around us. If you think about the community you live in now, the community you came from, I'm not asking you, this is a rhetorical question. You ask yourself, have you grown because of that? Did you become a shrinking violet because wherever you lived in the past? That will already tell you how the influences of your community on you. The Gemara has an interesting statement. There's a Gemara in Shabbat, also known as Maseches Shabbos. Amar Rabbi Yonatan. I told the Kira, my granddaughter, I told her within the States, say Shabbos, Juntiv. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, she'll say, Saba, yeah. Shabbos, Juntiv. I said, it's only Tuesday. Amar Rabbi Yonatan. Leolam al yimna adam et atzmo mibeit hamidrash umidivrei Torah. A person should never stop themselves from learning, from going to Beit Midrash, even when the person's dying. This is the Torah that a person, when he dies in a tent, and it's about tuman tara, about a mate, it makes someone ritually impure, which means even if a person's dying, God forbid, they should be still somehow or other involved in Torah. There's a meaning to what that is, but I'm not getting into it now. Amarish Lakish, ein divrei Torah mitkaimin el b'misha memit atzmo aleh. Torah doesn't, I don't know the right word to translate mitkaimim. It doesn't stand. It doesn't maybe more than exist. Like it doesn't have legs, except for someone who kills himself over Torah. It doesn't mean you kill yourself, God forbid. It means not in a literal sense, but it's describing commitment. It's not like, well, if I have time, I'll learn. Or yeah, I pick up a Tehillim and I say it once every 3 months or something like that. It's not acquired casually. It's that it is part of your life. That is what it is. It demands investment. There's no question about it. Maral tells us that naturally we gravitate towards comfort. Naturally we gravitate towards, being like kind of just like, who wouldn't want to rather, for most people, just kind of sit on the couch watching something versus exerting themselves for something, whether it's exercise or learning, because people like to, because remember, we're made of, I'm not getting too far at this because it'll get way off base, but there are 4 yesodot. There's earth, wind, fire, besides the band, earth, wind, fire, and earth, wind, fire, water. And each one of those, in Tanya goes into, like, describes about how they represent different things within in creation. We're made of earth. What is earth? Earth is sedentary. It's just goes down. It just sits. That's our nature. And we have Torah, which is Mayim. Mayim, what does it do? Mayim is always going into there, so seeking its lowest level and trying to nurture that as well. Fire, which we talked about before, is always trying to go up. That's why Kiner Mitzvah Torah. Oh, if you take a candle, you turn it upside down, the fire still goes up. It doesn't go down. Can't do that. That's like so. Okay, whatever. So, but we are by nature people who, by nature, to be sedentary. I don't think any babies are born say, show me the elliptical machine. I don't think. And the language of galut that he uses, right? You should go into galut, really kind of captures this idea, because we leave behind the gravitational pull of convenience. This is the wording indirectly of Maharal. He doesn't use those exact words. First of all, he spoke Hebrew. But what does that mean? Let's say a person is in a very comfortable community, and they get along in their community, and there's classes here and there, and there's a guy goes to Minyan, and the woman does whatever she might do here and there. Okay. But it's kind of pulling them down. It's pulling them down. And that's the perspective of the community. It's not a very high-level community. When you go into Galut, which we talked about last week, is you're changing your nature. You have to readjust and realign a lot of things in your life. When a person makes Aliyah, Chas v'Shalom, it's the exact opposite going into Galut. But it means you have to rethink who you are. Some people have to reinvent themselves. Some people have to come to terms with, I was that, but now I'm this. Learn new skills, find new friends, all these things. And we all, at some point, whether it was 40 plus years ago for you?
Making Aliyah?
Yeah.
85, 86.
Yeah, so it's wow. 41 years. Wow. Beautiful. This, yeah, we're coming up on.
I really am committed to trying to learn Hebrew.
Oh, it's about time. We'll sit down. I'll tell you the Aleph and the Bet. I'll show you what these look like.
I hope so. I actually bought translation earpods.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So that you hear it and then it translates for you. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah.
Now, the second statement, give another 40, 50 years. If you can't do it yourself, I'll be happy to help you. Okay, I promise you.
You're not going to live
No,
to
please don't. That's right. The second clause, the second statement of the Horai is that don't say the Torah is going to come after you. It's going to find you. But it sounds kind of repetitive, right? If you say you're even told to go to a place of Torah, why do I have to add? And don't say it's going to come after you. By the mere fact that you're going to it. So he's saying he's addressing a mistake, a subtle mistake that people make. A person may, in fact, acknowledge the value of Torah. If you ask the average so-called religious dati guy, dati woman, and you ask them, is Torah important in your life? Is Torah important? I would imagine 99% of people will say yes. Doesn't mean they do everything, doesn't mean they keep everything. Of course not. But is it important? Is it a value? Yes, it's a value. But they also assume that they don't need to change their circumstances. Somehow the Torah will seep in, it'll become a part of me. I don't have proactive, I don't have to really do too much. The attitude is not just in 2026 Tafshin Pei Vav, but it goes to ancient times as well, and maybe even more so today. The crazy thing is, because we live in an age of instantaneous information. Books arrive at our door. We can stream lectures online. We can go to videos. You can, whether it's Torah Anytime or whatever. There's so many, hundreds and hundreds, probably millions of hours of Torah available online. But still, Rav Norai says, insists, Torah doesn't come to you. You have to go to the Torah. You have to be proactive. Someone can say, I know, unfortunately, a good amount of people who say, guys, love daven. They'll put on tefillin, but never learn anything. Never. It's just not important to them. They know it's important, but they don't take up the time to do something about it. That's a big problem. I know more than one, more than 20, more than 50 like that. The problem is not access to information. The access is instant. It's everywhere. The issue is personal transformation. That's what Narai is trying to get across this in this Mishnah, is transforming. No matter where a person is on the retzef, on the spectrum of growth or lack thereof, one can always grow. Yes.
Sometimes all a person needs is someone to say,
Mhm.
I go this way.
Yep.
Why don't you come with
Very
me?
good. So let me comment. Yes. So what you're saying,
I listened to this shiur.
Right.
If you listen, then we could discuss it later
Okay, so-
because that personal.
so I'm going to repeat that so it's on here also, so people hear it. Sometimes all it does is really take someone to say to a friend, "Hey, I listen to this certain shiur, or I go to this certain class. How about you go along with me, or you want me to send you the link?" So that's exactly part of Ibn Harai's point, which is when a person, I get this thing flying in my face, when a person is in a community where, where the environment fosters something like that, it then helps. So the person who comes to a community, let's say he comes to Malay Adumim, comes to meet Spanibo, they don't have a strong background. Fine. Plenty of people like that. Or the Torah means something, but to them it means 10 minutes after davening to open Mishnayos, and then that's their weekly learning. Fine. Okay. But then someone says, "Hey, by the way, I go to such and such a class, or I watch a certain podcast. You want to, maybe you want to come along with me." And I know people, by the way, I can tell you factually what you say is 100% right, because I know people who attend a couple of my classes that it's only because someone else said, "Hey, why don't you just come listen to this or go online?" So, which is kind of cool. But you can consume endless amount of Torah without ever entering a genuine world of Torah. A person could sit in their little room and go online 18 hours a day. They're learning Torah. Everything they're learning is fantastic. And it's great. And it's every minute, every second is a mitzvah of limud Torah. But they're not in a world surrounded necessarily by Torah. And that also has an effect. Because it's not just about the words. It's about the feel. I've mentioned many times I've tried to go to Birkat Moshe, the Beit Midrash here. And years ago, I went many years. I never walked in the building. Not on purpose, just never reason to go. And I went one time to go daven mincha there. And I came a few minutes before mincha. And the kol Torah, just the sound, I missed that. That's why I've been going back since. So it requires active pursuit. It requires us to really be proactive. And says, for your friends will establish it in your hands. However, I don't even know how's your English translate the next clause of the Mishnah. I'm curious because I haven't found really great.
It is vital to have your fellow Torah students nearby to discuss your studies.
Oh, okay.
As only they will establish Torah within you.
Good. Okay, so it's vital to have friends who will establish Torah in your hands. Okay, good. So this is another dimension. He's laying another layer onto this whole idea. Because even if a person reaches a place of Torah, let's say you come, whether it's Efrat or Mitzvah Avot or Eilat, wherever you might, I don't know about Eilat, because I know they have a yeshiva there. I have a friend who was the Rosh Yeshiva down there. So, and talk about humility. You can always learn from somebody something, always. I just love this man who was a friend of mine, who I've known for probably 50 years. Many years ago, he came to Chicago, because that's where he's originally from. And we were together with a few other couples. And actually, none of us knew what he did. So someone asked him, what do you do? He said, well, I live in Eilat. And in the morning, I get up, I go to shul, I help with the kids, get them off to school. And then if there's time, I go to the Beit Midrash. When I get there, sometimes they ask me a couple questions, and I try to help them. Okay, what's missing from this? He said, okay, so I give a class here and there. He was the Rosh Yeshiva. He didn't want to explain that. To him, that was already saying, no, hey, I'm Mr. Rosh Yeshiva here. It was just, because to him, you don't need to be boastful. And it's not being boastful. You're saying, what do you do? I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a salesman, whatever it might be. That's who you are. That's not who you are. That's what you do. It's not who you are, by the way, which I talked about last year on Shab Shuvah. But a person can say to themselves, I can learn independently. I will say, I told you this before, you know where that's from. That's the Sarah Mashkim said to Paro, I today mentioned my sins. So I say it. Most of my learning, the one exception, is by myself. It's not the greatest thing. And I know that. It's how I learn. Should I have myself a chavruta all day, multiple days a week? Yeah, but I don't. Maybe I will. I don't know. I'll check back with you in 40 years. We'll see. But Rav Nahorai tells us that your friends will establish it in your hands. And so is what Mark read in the English over there. What the Torah is sustained through companionship. Chazal tell us in Masechet Ta'anit, V'amru Rabbi Chanina, this is a very famous, it's actually based on a pasuk in Tehillim. Partially is not. Harbe lamati mirabotai. I've learned a lot from my teachers. I've learned more from my friends, my colleagues, than my teachers. I've learned more from my students than from anybody else. Now, does that mean that this teacher is learning always from the student? Usually the teacher is teaching the student learns from the teacher. But it's a powerful interaction. There's give and take between teacher and student. There's the idea of a chavruta. Chavruta from the word chaver. What does chaver? It means friend, right? It also means chibur. That's the word chevron, right? It went from churban, you turn the letters, you get chevron. You could have a churban where things fall apart. We have chevron, you have chaver, chabura, chavruta. All that the same shoresh, same root of the word. And by doing that, number one, first of all, we're going to talk about colleagues, then we're going to come back to this idea of teacher-student. So the Gemara tells us also in Brachot, Asu kitot isku b'Torah. You should make groups of people. People should gather together to learn. Why? Torah is really only acquired in an environment of groups. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina said, I'm not going to read the rest of this. Okay. So the Gemara tells us very clearly that studying alone can lead to mistakes. It can lead to not understanding. It's not about social isolation. You take of Chaim Kanievsky, who learned about literally 20 hours a day himself. He didn't have chavruta. Who would want to be his chavruta? Who could even think about being a chavruta with him, right? And he was so immersed, people would come in, he wouldn't know they were there. I've watched videos of it. And same with Rav Yashiv. So it's all that you can tell me that, he's going to make mistakes. He's not making mistakes. He's gone through it so many times with so many people over the years. Now he's by himself. We're not Reb Chaim Kanievsky. It's not. So it's not about, he wasn't socially isolated. It's intellectual isolation. It's when we set ourselves up intellectually by ourselves, not to say we're better than somebody else. It's just that we're not being challenged. We're not being corrected. We're not discussing something that potentially could be a mistake. I had probably the most egregious example. Again, I'm sorry if I never remember if I told the story or not. I'm going to be going Bezrat Hashem for a couple of Shabbatot out of Malaysia to speak. And it's good because that way I know I didn't say these stories before. They will not have heard any of these stories, but here you might have heard them. I was teaching many, many years ago a refresher course for men in their, let's say 40s, refresher course at Avot Nida. It was over a period of 3 days or 3 weeks, whatever, like a couple hours each time. Just refresher because you tend to learn it when you get married, and only if you have questions you ever really review. And I was teaching, explaining that whenever the woman does the Hefsek Tahara, let's say on a Tuesday, that means that next Tuesday night she goes to the mikveh. In other words, 7 days. Shiva Nikiyim, blah, 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 blah. Guy came up to me after the class, white as a ghost. I mean, I thought he was literally going to drop dead in front of me. He misunderstood for 20 years when she goes to the mikveh. 1 day too early. It's a big problem. That's why when I teach, I always tell guys, imagine learning Hilchot Shabbat in a matter of a few weeks and never looking at it again. Can't do it. You have to review. You have to go over it. I had the benefit of people asking me questions, so I was always reviewing it. But okay. So we make mistakes. We make mistakes, and you have to have someone who's going to challenge you. And that's really one of the defining features of the Torah Shebe'al Peh. So because Hashem runs the world and does a very good job, he got my haskama. I just yeah. As I've mentioned here many times, that a discussion I might have or something I might read the next day comes up again in totally random area. I walked out of shul. Today is Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday night. I walked out of shul from Mariv, and 2 guys are standing there. And they said, Rabbi Shannon, you can answer this question. Okay, I know I'm already in trouble. Because it's usually not what bracha do you make on? It's usually when you get to that, when it's that introduction, it's a philosophical question or deeper question. Almost always when 2 guys are talking, and I hear that. I've had it a few times. Question was, why did Hashem give us Torah Shebe'al Peh, oral law, and Torah Shebichtav, the written law? Why does it give us one book? Right? Everything. Now, this, of course, when we talked about Pirke Avot, in the beginning, I talked about this, so it's fresh in my head. Not was fresh in my head, but I remember what I said. I have my own shita and approach and certain things I've read and learned over the years. And then I gave him this whole, we talked for like 20 minutes. And I gave him a chiddush about something, and I told him about certain opinions. Come home, I sit down the next morning to prepare for class. And it's about the need for a Torah Shebe'al Peh and a Torah Shebichtav. I had just gone through this with them, and really, why didn't Hashem just give us a book? I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but the idea being that you could potentially, number one, you lose the Masorah, because you don't really need teachers. Then you lead yourself into the situation of making mistakes. Make mistakes, because now you're not encouraged to. I said to them, lahavdil. Someone who's Muslim and wants to learn the Quran, they need one book. That's all they don't need, because they don't have commentary. They have books about it, but not like what we have. They have some commentaries about hadiths and this, but not like the havdil, like a Rashi and Tulsa. They don't have that kind of stuff. Very little of that. For the most part, to them, there's the Torah, the havdil, in quotes, their Torah should be stopped. That's it. That's what they have. But why does it say your friends will help, like the Kayem? Why does it say that your friends are going to make sure this happens, not your teachers? Not your rabbis, not your mentors, but your friends, because your peers contribute something unique. A Rav, a Rebbe, a teacher teaches, but the Chavruta struggles together. Usually, if I'm teaching, I don't mean this situation. I go into school, and I teach in a class. I teach a mafkid. It's a Chavro Behema Okelim. Okay, it's the 3rd chapter in Bava B'tzia. Oh my God, my mind's went blank. Bava Kama. And you go in there, you start teaching, and I explain, what does it mean, the hafkid? What does it mean to take, what does it mean, behema or kelim? Just say, the Mishne should say this. You start explaining, and I'm trying to get information into their heads, which hopefully they'll be able to coalesce and to learn. but we're not struggling together. We're not like, what are you talking about? This is what Rebbe Mary means. This is what he means. You're walking to Beit Midrash. Person who's not used to it. I think I told you this. I was in the Beit Midrash once when Rabbi Sabato was bringing a man and a woman into the Beit Midrash. They were evidently going to be donors. And you could see on the guy's face, like, because there's a lot of like that. He's like, are they okay? Nobody yelling at each other for it. So Rabbi Sabato, I could hear it from a distance. But explain, that's how it works in Beit Midrash. You get very passionate about what your opinion. That's pretty much how it was in Pumbedita, Nerda, and Surah, and all these places, in 1,500 years ago. Colleagues ask questions that you may not anticipate. Students ask questions. That's why, for me personally, over the years, I've been teaching officially since 1999, but even before that. And I can tell you countless times where I've learned so much from my students because they'll ask a question I never thought about, or they'll push me. What do you mean by that? Or can you explain to me this? And you can't. It's little kids, but once they get to 10 or 11 years old, they know when you're trying to just blow smoke up their skirt, so to speak. So, plus the colleague, never heard that?
Even if I did, I wouldn't repeat it.
Okay. Sorry. Anyways, sorry. Yes. Yes. A colleague will notice your weaknesses and point them out.
That's why we're here.
That's right. I appreciate that. I really do. But we don't have all the time in the day to point them all out. So, but also will help disabuse a person of certain assumptions they may be going through, and say, well, this is what this is like. This is, I had a discussion with somebody not that long ago that he really buys into the concept of biblical criticism that Torah is divine. It's given to us by Hashem, but it was edited over time by man. And what we have is not the original version. He gave me an example of one thing, and I said, okay, I don't want to get into it, but I didn't. And we're not learning together. But if we were, that'd be a good discussion. It'd be a very good discussion to have. Many of the greatest debates in Jewish history came not between teacher and student, but between colleagues, intellectual equals. Again, just open the Gemara to any page. Rav and Shmuel, over and over. And they got along. They got along great. Mishne tells us that Hillel and Shammai, even though Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, they're students, even though they had polar opposite opinions on certain things, when it came to Tuman Tara, Mutar Asur, they still got married to each other. They still did. And I won't say lahavdil because it's a similar idea. A person who's Chabad, I'm real Chabad. By the way, today is the Rabbi's yard site, Gimel Tammuz. The Shama should have an aliyah. Someone's Chabad, they will only eat Chabad Shechita. You know that, right? They'll only eat Chabad Shechita. So if they're going to marry somebody, they want to try to stay within Chabad because they want to have the same customs, the same siddur, the same meat, same everything. And you don't see a lot of Chabad, non-Chabad marriages. You really don't. I mean, I know plenty of Chabadnikim that I can't think of many that are, so to speak, quote, mixed between Chabad, non-Chabad. And that's fine. That's their shita. That's their business. I don't care. But you would think that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel would stay within their own little Dalet Amot and marry within their own student body. And the answer is they didn't. They didn't. Because that was Shalom. The last statement is don't rely on your own understanding. And I think that's probably the clearest of everything in this Mishnah. It's probably the deepest lesson of all of them. First of all, it sounds like it's anti-intellectual. But Judaism is not anti-intellectual. Don't rely on your own understanding. Torah demands analysis. It demands reasoning. It demands logic. It means review. It doesn't demand intelligence. It doesn't. It really doesn't demand intelligence for the sake of intelligence. I would rather somebody know 50% of something fantastically well, still have to know everything what you need to do in life. I'm saying, as far as like a deeper understanding, 50% like that, rather than 10% of knowing everything. We have a lot in our lives that we have to know, and no one's going to know everything. That's for sure. So what exactly is Rabbi Noharai warning us against? Intellectual arrogance. I know it all. I don't. And by the way, you think that type of person doesn't exist? I have met many Many, many narcissistic fools. Vast majority of them are male. I only think I've come across one or two female narcissists. I'm sure I know that there are, but I haven't come across them, both in the regular world, so to speak, and in the Torah world. The Vilna Gaon said that probably one of the greatest obstacles to wisdom is kind of like sounds like a paradox. One of the greatest obstacles to wisdom is the assumption you have it. You think you know. As opposed to what Tevye said, when you're rich, they think you really know, which is also very true. People do. When you trust your own judgment, when you don't listen to somebody else's input, when you don't question yourself, when you don't do any of these things, you don't grow. You have to be able to open your mind and say, I might be wrong. You might be. Which, as I said before, and I know I'm not alone in this, I've talked to other rabbis in this, you get a question from somebody, they will say very respectfully all the time, are you sure? Not in a disrespectful way. Whenever I hear that, unless it's something that's obviously black and white, I'll say, you know what? I'll check again. Because I've made mistakes. And why would I want to make mistakes in someone else's cheshbon? Human beings are very subjective. Torah is objective. We're very subjective. We're influenced by biases and preferences and our perspective in life and our life history and what were assumptions and emotions. So if we rely exclusively on ourselves, we confuse our own opinions with the Torah opinions. There is, I would ask you for a machzor, but you won't have the right version. There's in the piyut at the beginning, prior to Kol Nidre, in Avot Mizrach, there is, to me, the best piyut ever written in the history of humanity, when it comes to tshuva. And it is in there, you're basically listing in poetic fashion all the things you've done wrong. But in a beautiful way, I've literally watched grown men crying, saying it. It's a very emotional. And I said, and I've said it here, that if you say it with your whole heart. When you finish saying it, you can go home. You've already did everything you need to do for Yom Kippur. It's magnificent. One of the things is I've made my Torah your Torah. Meaning how I see it and what I think it should be, that's Torah. And that's the exact opposite. We have to take Hashem's word. We have to make it our Torah. We have to understand the best of our ability what it is. And that's the purpose of this Mishnah, where Rabbi Norai is telling us. We have to do the best we can. We have to go to the best place we can to learn Torah. We have to make it a part of our lives. Don't just rely on yourselves. Make sure you're challenged and you're going to grow. All right. And that's my story. And I'm sticking to it. Have a wonderful day.